Welcome to The Explainer. So have you ever caught yourself completely filtering your own life? It's this incredibly subtle thing. You might realize that you're no longer truly living, but instead you're constantly observing yourself through the eyes of everyone else. You think carefully before you speak, you weigh literally every choice to make sure it'll be accepted, and somewhere deep inside, a part of you steps back and just waits for the world's reaction before you dare to make a move. Well, today, we're going to dive into Carl Jung's absolutely fascinating psychological roadmap for breaking free from all those exhausting societal expectations. And to be clear, this isn't about just ignoring the world. It's about a really profound journey from living by the external gaze to finally discovering your very own inner anchor.
Here's the roadmap for our psychological expedition today. We'll kick things off with living by external gazes, then move into the prison of the persona, tackle facing your inner shadow, explore the power of solitude, and we'll wrap it all up by building true inner discipline.
I really want to start by throwing this deeply personal question out there for you. Take a second to honestly think about it. Because when your self-worth is constantly riding this roller coaster based on other people's opinions, where a single compliment makes your entire day, but one slightly unfriendly look makes you second-guess your entire life path, it gets utterly exhausting, right? You're basically measuring every choice against how the world might react. On the surface, sure, you look like you're doing just fine, but inside, your inner center just doesn't belong to you anymore.
Okay, let's dive straight into section 1, living by external gazes, where we'll look at exactly where this feeling of alienation actually comes from.
Jung has this brilliant way of illustrating this state. He compares it to wandering through a massive forest without a compass. Imagine being out there in the woods. Because you don't have your own inner axis or any kind of internal directional tool, you're pretty much forced to just look at where the crowd is headed. If everyone turns left, well, you turn left too. Not because it's the right path for you, but simply because you're terrified of being left behind. Without realizing it, you've handed over the authority to define who you are to something completely outside of your control.
Let's look at an incredibly relatable example from the source material. Picture a highly successful guy in his 30s. He works nonstop, and honestly, he gets praised for it constantly. But the second he actually has some free time, when no one actively needs him or is handing out gold stars, he feels completely anxious and empty. He just sits there comparing himself to his peers, feeling like he's falling behind. He's living his life by a collective map, totally denying his own unique rhythm. And the thing is, when you force yourself to run on someone else's treadmill, massive inner conflict and fatigue are absolutely guaranteed. Now here's a massive point Jung makes. Living by this collective map and craving all that recognition, it is not a moral flaw. Jung wasn't judging anybody for this. It's actually just a totally natural sign of an unfinished developmental stage. But if you leave it unchecked, it's going to cause serious alienation from your true self. And alienation isn't about being a bad person. It's about drifting further and further away from your authentic core, all while convincing yourself that you're just doing what's normal. Which brings us to section 2, the prison of the persona. This is where we have to confront the true, hidden cost of all that social acceptance. So, what exactly is the persona? Think of it as a social mask. And look, the mask isn't designed to hurt us. It's a super practical tool we all create to help us survive in human society. It smooths things over and protects us from constant conflict. But here's the catch. That persona becomes a literal prison the moment we forget it's just a tool and start actually believing that the mask is who we truly are. When that happens, when the persona turns into a prison, you completely stop living from the inside out. Instead, you're spending all your energy just maintaining an external image. Take the story of Anna from our source material. She was this creative professional who lived so flawlessly within her mask. Like, she knew exactly what to post online, exactly what to say in meetings, how to be perfectly pleasant all the time, that she literally forgot what she authentically enjoyed. Anytime she wanted to try something slightly different, this huge wave of anxiety would hit her. Oh no, will they judge me? She had backed herself into a corner where there was nowhere safe left to just take the mask off. When you finally start to pry that mask loose, yeah, it's going to cause some anxiety. You're leaving a very comfortable, highly familiar safety zone. But Jung believes something really powerful about this, that anxiety is not a warning sign that you've taken a wrong turn. Actually, that unease is a sign you are finally brushing up against the truth. You start giving yourself permission to just be a little misunderstood in small moments, simply to protect your own inner honesty.
And that leads us to a huge turning point in this explainer. Section 3, Facing Your Inner Shadow, where we learn about the whole process of withdrawing projection.
Okay, so you drop the mask,
You step out of that exhausting rat race of constantly comparing your achievements to everyone else's. But then you've got to ask yourself this really tough question. Who is actually judging you? Because oddly enough, even when you stop chasing the crowd, that deep fear of being judged doesn't just magically vanish. A slightly ambiguous look from a friend or a quiet pause in a conversation can still make you feel like you're under a microscope. So what's going on there?
Well, what's fascinating is that the incredibly harsh critic you keep hearing out there in the world is often just your own unacknowledged shadow. Let's say, deep down, you carry this heavy, unspoken belief that I am just not good enough. Because that thought is way too painful to deal with, your psyche sneaks it out the back door and assigns it to someone else. There's an example of a woman who is totally convinced her colleagues didn't respect her. She took every harmless question as a direct attack. But when she finally did the inner work, she had this light bulb moment. The judgment wasn't coming from them at all. It was her own repressed shadow projecting all her internal self-doubt right onto her coworkers. So by withdrawing this projection, which is exactly what Jung is getting at here, you actually reclaim your psychological energy. When you stop obsessing over who is judging me and start getting curious about, wait, which part of me is actually saying this, everything shifts. The outside world suddenly turns back into a neutral space instead of a threatening one. You just don't need other people to carry around your unresolved inner baggage anymore. Once all that loud external noise finally fades out, we step into Section 4, the power of solitude. This is about encountering the self, a space a lot of people are terrified of, but Jung saw as completely sacred.
I absolutely love this visual metaphor. Just picture a lake early in the morning. When the wind is howling, the surface is constantly rippling and churning, and it only reflects these distorted, frantic little images. Solitude is simply the calming of that wind. It allows the water to finally become still enough so that it can reflect the true, clear images that are hidden underneath. Silence doesn't somehow invent your true voice, it just finally gives it a quiet enough room to be heard.
Think about Steve Jobs for a second. Back in the 80s, when he was famously forced out of Apple, to the outside world, it looked like a massive, humiliating failure. But he didn't use that solitary period to immediately start chasing the next tech trend or desperately try to prove his worth to the industry. Instead, he traveled to India, practiced meditation, and took the time to deeply restructure his inner self. So when he eventually came back to Apple, he was operating from this incredibly clear, highly intuitive inner center.
Jung really hits the nail on the head right here. Withdrawing for a little while isn't about being antisocial or running away from your problems. True solitude doesn't actually distance you from people. It just gives yourself the breathing room it needs to coordinate your own life. Once you stop needing everyone else to act as a prop for your identity, you can actually go back to your relationships and, for the first time, be fully, genuinely present.
And that brings us to our ultimate destination for this explainer, Section 5, Building True Inner Discipline, where we move from reacting to the world to establishing a rock-solid inner life.
When your extroverted ego is running the show, you're pretty much just acting to be seen. But inner necessity, that means you take action simply because something deep inside you demands it, even if literally no one is around to applaud. It's kind of like Achilles in Greek mythology. He's absolutely invincible when he's following his own unique destiny, but the exact moment he abandons his individual path just to chase what the collective calls glory, he falls at his one vulnerable spot. The extroverted ego is destined to burn out, but inner necessity, that gives you quiet, sustainable focus. Think of it like a tree. True discipline isn't about frantically shaping this gorgeous canopy of leaves just so everyone walking by can admire it. It's about quietly, consistently nourishing the invisible, underground roots that are actually going to keep you standing when a storm hits. There's a great story from the source about Leon, a guy in finance who hit a wall of burnout. His fix wasn't some loud, flashy self-improvement crusade. He just started waking up a little bit earlier every single day to read and write a few lines of personal reflection. No applause, no audience, just a quiet, steady realignment with himself. Let's pull this all together. When you finally withdraw that psychic energy from the world, it starts flowing like a deep underground stream. You completely stop sitting around waiting for the world to tell you that you're doing okay, and that gives you this profound sense of emotional independence. It means praise isn't going to throw you into a manic high, and criticism isn't going to totally destroy you, because your center of gravity has fully shifted from the outside to the inside. Now sure, this thought is absolutely terrifying if your ego is still immature, because an immature ego is practically addicted to feeding off external feedback. But as we wrap up our journey today, really let this sink in. Fully accepting yourself is the ultimate liberation.
You don't need to prove a single thing anymore, because there's no insecure part left inside you that's screaming for the crowd's reassurance.
I'm going to leave you with this one final thought to mull over. When you look in the mirror today, are you trying to see the person the world expects you to be, or are you finally looking at your own true center? Focusing on yourself isn't some selfish rebellion. It is a quiet, absolutely vital return home. Because when you truly stop scrambling to find your place in the world completely loses its power to shake you.